Lila was different from the other girls. She wasn't like the others in her small town, who loved the sunlight and laughter. No, Lila preferred the shadows, the silence, the places where no one dared to tread. People whispered about her behind her back, calling her strange, unsettling, Eerie even. She embraced it. In fact, she liked the way they looked at her, the fear in their eyes. The old house at the edge of town had been abandoned for years, but Lila found herself drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Its walls were sagging, its windows boarded up, its garden overgrown. Yet, there was something about it, something alive in its decay, that made her heart race. She couldn't stay away. One night, under the pale glow of the moon, Lila entered the house. The door creaked open as if it had been waiting for her, and inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of something older, something long forgotten. The floorboards groaned under her weight as she explored room after room, the walls whispering to her in a language she could almost understand. In the attic, she found it, a portrait, faded and warped, of a man with eyes too dark to be human. His face was haunting, yet something about it pulled her in. A chill crawled up her spine, but Lila smiled. She could feel him there, in the room with her, watching her, with those dark eyes. Her heart pounded, and as if compelled by an invisible force, she reached out to touch the frame. The moment her fingers brushed it, a cold gust of wind blew through the attic, slamming the door shut behind her. Lila gasped, but she wasn't afraid. She knew this was only the beginning. The shadows around her seemed to deepen, swirling in the corners of the room. Then, from the darkened edges, a voice spoke, a low, drawn-out whisper that chilled her bones. "You found me." Lila's breath caught. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely a tremble. The shadows shifted, and then he was there. He emerged from the darkness like a wraith, his form flickering in and out of reality, his eyes glowing like two black holes. His skin was as pale as the moonlight, and his smile was wide, almost unnatural. "I am Ethan," he said, his voice smooth, but carrying a weight of something ancient, something tragic. "I've been waiting for you." Lila's heart skipped a beat. Waiting for her? How could he know? How could anyone know? "Why me?" she asked, stepping closer to him, drawn in by his magnetic presence. Ethan tilted his head, his dark eyes studying her, his lips curling into that same eerie smile. "Because you belong to the darkness as much as I do." His voice softened, almost tender. "You can set me free." Lila felt her pulse quicken. She wanted to know more. She needed to know more. She stepped closer, her hand outstretched. "How?" Ethan's smile widened. He took her hand gently, his touch cold as ice. "You must give yourself to me, completely. Only then can we be together, forever." Lila's breath caught in her throat. Something about his words, his touch, made her feel alive in a way she had never known. The world outside of him seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them in that dimly lit room. She wanted to feel that connection, wanted to let go of the world she had always known. And so, without hesitation, she whispered, "Yes." From that moment on, Lila was never the same. She spent every night in the house with Ethan, their time together growing darker, more twisted. Ethan's presence consumed her, feeding on her every fear, her every desire. He showed her the hidden truths of the world, truths that no one else could see. He taught her how to control the shadows, to weave them into her own, to move like a phantom through the night. But the deeper she fell into his world, the more she realized that Ethan was not the loving soul he appeared to be. The more she learned, more she saw through his eyes, the more she understood. Ethan was cursed, trapped in the darkness, bound by something far worse than love. He had been waiting for someone to release him from his prison of shadows, but there was a price to pay. Each night as she drifted into sleep, she could hear him whispering her name in her ear, his voice growing more urgent, more desperate. She knew that if she gave in completely, if she surrendered to him, she would lose herself forever. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't stop the pull of the darkness. One night Ethan appeared before her, his form more solid than before, his eyes burning with an intensity that made her heart race. He pulled her into his arms, and his lips brushed against her neck, cold as death. "Join me, Lila," he whispered. "Give yourself to me, and together we'll make the world our playground." For a moment, Lila hesitated, but then, with a shiver of anticipation, she closed her eyes. "Yes, Ethan, I'm yours. As she spoke those words, the house around them seemed to shake. The walls groaned, and the very air grew thick with power. Shadows danced around them, growing larger, more alive. Ethan smiled, his dark eyes gleaming with satisfaction. But something was wrong. As Lila surrendered herself fully to him, she felt something cold and twisted wrap around her heart. The darkness she had once craved began to suffocate her, tightening like a noose. Ethan's smile faltered as he pulled away from her. His form flickered again, becoming more insubstantial. You weren't supposed to." The shadows that had once been her allies turned against her, swarming around her, their whispers turning to shrieks of rage. Lila realized, too late, that Ethan's curse was not one of freedom. It was one of entrapment. He had never loved her. He had never wanted her as his equal. He wanted her soul. And now, she was his. The town would never know what happened to Lila. The house remained abandoned, the darkness consuming all those who dared enter. But sometimes on moonlit nights, if you listen carefully, you can hear Lila's voice on the wind calling out for Ethan. But it's not a voice of love anymore. It's a voice of despair, trapped in a world of shadows, forever yearning for freedom she can never have.